So welcome to the Rhino 8 for Mac getting started. Our project today is the Master Bath Reno. I'm Mary Fugier from the Seattle office, and I'm also joined by Matt Bennett, and Matt is going to be covering the chat for us. So if you get to a point where it seems like we're at the end of class and we're moving really fast, don't worry. You'll be able to start and stop the video. If you're watching the video uh, from YouTube or our Vimeo channel, go to the description to get the link to download the files that you will need for today's class. In that set, there is a PDF, and in the PDF, there are the dimensions that we are going to be using. And the base unit for this model is inches. However, there are the meter equivalent. So if you prefer to work in meters, just because the model is in inches doesn't mean you can't specify distances and sizes in meters. All you need to do is follow the number by an M, and Rhino will do the conversion. So you will see that as we get started. So if you aren't familiar with feet and inches and you'd rather use meters, refer to that PDF for what the meter equivalent is as we're typing in, and there will be a few distances and sizes that are in inches. You can put in the meter equivalent, and we'll talk about that conversion as we get started. So this is here just so you kind of have an idea the physical size of the object. And whether you are a jeweler like Matt, or a rocket scientist, or a product designer, somebody in your family is going to ask you to help with a kitchen remodel or a bath remodel. So it's always good to know how to use Rhino for this type of application. And it's not that much different than designing anything else. It's just bigger. And the tolerances are also a little bit bigger. So when we're designing for home construction, usually a 1/4 inch. I like to aim for an 1/8 of an inch, but I can't go any, if I add any more precision to that, my contractor isn't going to follow it anyway. So we just want to be in the ballpark, and 1/8 of an inch is a real good place to aim for. So you have that in the set that you will download. And if you can look here, this is what I downloaded. I downloaded the zip, I unzipped it, and the file that we're going to start with here in a few moments is called Master Bath Start. So we're going to do that here shortly. I want to show you what we are going to be creating. So this is the 3D model, and I can rotate it around, and I can look at it from the top and from any angle. And what is good to point out here is when you're doing a kitchen or a bath remodel, you're not going to be manufacturing or fabricating your own faucet, right? You're going to go to a website, maybe it's Kohler, maybe it's American Standard, and you're going to download something that you will order from a contractor supply or even from Home Depot. So that's what is important about this exercise, is that there are a lot of blocks here that we've downloaded. You can download more, and you're going to add them to your scene. So if you're speccing out this beautiful sconce that we can get from Kohler, you don't have to model it. You can go to the Kohler website, you can download their public domain model, and you will be on your way. So that's what's unique about this project, is that it's a real project. And in a real project, not many people are going to fabricate their own bathtub, right? They're going to go find one that's already manufactured. They're going to order it. It's going to come on a big pallet and it's going to sit in your garage until it's ready to go into the space. So that's one thing. We're also using materials, and the materials are applied to surfaces. So one thing that does for us is that it gives us a way to very quickly add up the area. And so when I pick on this group of surfaces that is on the tile layer, and I go up here to analyze mass property and area, I can get the area not only in the current unit, which is inches, but I can get the area in square feet. And what I did is I took that information and I added it to that table over here. So the file, the model that we're doing is a virtual build. And because it represents sizes in real space, we're going to be able to extract details, not just dimensions, but areas for the product that we're going to be ordering. The other option that we have here is because we're using blocks, we can extract out a report on all the blocks that are being used in this model and add that report to a spreadsheet, format it, and then bring it back onto the model. Without any fancy programming, that's really what we do right now. There isn't like, well, there is a live link, but not as extensive as this. This is a full report that goes out to a comma separated value. We have high hopes for improvements in future Rhino, but today we're going to be working with Rhino 8 and what you get with Rhino 8 out of the box. And I think it's not just important to look at what we want to do in the future, but what you can do today. And running a Python script to do the report on the block quantities, formatting it in Excel or Google spreadsheet, and you can bring it right back on your model today. Is it where we want to be in the future? No, but it's certainly going to get your project done and out for permit or on the contractor's desk so he can give you an estimate. So one of the other features that Rhino supports are layouts. And layouts, each sheet represents the sheet that's going to go in your plotter or printer if you're going to do reduced size. But this is a D size sheet. So if I were going to send this out full size, I would be sending it out to a DesignJet type plotter, and we would be able to, send these out to the contractor, a full-size set that a lot of these he could scale off of, or she could scale off of. So if I go here to page 2, you can see that we have windows through the model, and these windows are called details. And the details arrange multiple views of the model on the sheet of paper. And I also have a link here to that Google spreadsheet that I was talking about. This isn't a live link, but I can update it. So the other thing I don't like about this, it's a PDF import. These links aren't active. However, what I have done over here on properties is I've added a link to my Google Docs, and there I have that table. Now, it's not quite a live link, but I can make a change here, update the PDF, and then that will update my table. So it's a little bit removed, but it does work at this point in time. So when those things are important, it is a way to get that table on your sheet. And if I go back to page 1 and I double click on this detail to make it active, you can see I can rotate it around and I can pick another view to be active there instead of the one that I have. And the detail is showing here in render preview mode. And there are other modes that we can display modes that we can display our model in. And this view is in a mode called monochrome. And because this is a parallel viewport, when I zoom, I have it locked so that I don't change the scale factor that I've assigned to the detail. So how do we make sure that when it's printed, it is to scale? That it is a property of the detail. So when I go to the property panel, I assign 1 to 16, which is 1 inch on the paper equals 16 inches. And another way to express that is 3/4 of an inch equals a foot. So these have parallel views on them. This one is from the top and it details the section cuts that we've assigned to these details. And if I go to page 3, you can see we have a few more for you there. Now, the other thing that we're showing off here from Rhino 8 is the feature called section clipping sections, and that's what we've assigned here to the detail. And the clipping section has a style, and the style is assigned to the layer. So this is the tub, and if we scroll down to the tub, you can see that it has this fancy crosshatch, and that's because of the style, as well as the other layers like the ceiling and the floor, which are in, let me cancel that, they're in a layer hierarchy. So if I look here under ceiling, it's under a layer called done, and if I pick on custom, it's that hatch, and I'm rotating it 45 degrees, and I'm scaling the pattern by 0.5. So that's the link there between the hatch and the layer. So I think this will be really fun to do together, and let's take a look at a couple pieces of information here that will be really helpful as we're moving through this model. First of all, here's the Rhino website. You're all probably familiar with that to some extent. If you go to the download page, or even the buy page, I like to point out one thing here that's really important, and that is when you're purchasing Rhino, you are not committing to a platform. You're purchasing a license. So that means that you can run on your Windows machine or your Mac computer one at a time. And if you add your license to the Cloud Zoo, it will float between multiple computers. So if you want more information on the Cloud Zoo, I usually can get to, actually, let me go to support. There's a direct link there off the support page, which says Cloud Zoo licensing, gives you the advantage of adding your key to a Rhino account. You can also lock the key to one computer. So if you are heading out on a boat for 6 months and you don't want to have to worry about re-upping the lease of Rhino, which happens every 2 to 3 weeks. So it's also true if you use the Cloud Zoo licensing, you don't have to be on the internet every day. There is a lease that you're given, and you need to be on the internet when that lease expires. And you can find that out by going up to Rhino settings and licensing, and it will tell you at what date the lease will expire. I like to call this kicking the can because if you're on the internet on a regular basis, you will never reach that expiration date. It will keep being reset. And when you reset it, or when it gets reset, it's another, 2 or 3 weeks. So theoretically, you will never reach the expiration date unless you unplug from the internet and run isolated for a couple weeks. That's when you might open Rhino. It might say the lease is expired. Just get back on the internet, renew that lease. Or if you'd rather lock it to one computer, that is certainly an option. If you go to the Learn page and you pick on Rhino for Mac, you'll get lots of resources that are done on the Rhino for Mac platform. And if you want a link to where this video will be, you can pick on this cabin and it will bring you out to a page that has all of the getting starteds that we've done over the past 10 years. I think that if you're running Rhino 8 for Mac, you should be able to do a Rhino 8 for Windows getting started. You can see I did this on the Windows platform last week. And that's one of the goals of Rhino 8 is to unify the UI so that when especially an instructor is teaching a class and there's a mix of students with Windows and Mac, the description for how to do something doesn't have to be different. And I think that works out pretty well with Rhino 8. If you go back to like Rhino 7 for Mac, after working on Rhino 8 for Mac, you will see that there are some differences here that in the beginning were meant to be more Mac-like, but they really got in the way for the Rhino user. So we're trying to close the gap and make the UIs as similar as they can be. I will point out a couple differences as we get started here, and some of what I call features and why people and customers want to run on the Mac. And there are a few advantages that we get here from running on the Mac. And you will find this video posted out here shortly after the class. And the blocks that I'm using a lot of them are public domain blocks. They came from the Kohler website. And when you're on the Kohler website, you can get to a lot of their blocks. Now, this is doing, it's also linking me up with Ferguson, which or showing a banner up here, which is where I've purchased from before. But if you scroll down under the specifications for this faucet, you can get to the blocks. And I usually download the SketchUp block. So each of these will have a CAD block, and the CAD block, we'll see if I can link to it here. It's being a little, here we go. Installation spec sheet, and download the design blocks. And they will offer you SketchUp or DWG, and I prefer the SketchUp file. It just comes into Rhino a little bit better. So take a look out there. American Standard, Millguard window, Simpson. I mean, they are all going to have blocks for you to download, design blocks. So that's where we got our blocks for a lot of the blocks from these various websites for today's presentation. We do have them in the file to make it easier for us to find and insert. So we'll be getting into that here shortly. So go ahead and open Rhino. And one of the advantages of using the Mac version is that you will have multiple documents open. So if I want to begin a new file here from Rhino 8 from the Mac, I can begin a new file without a template or begin using a template. So up under File and New, I'll pick New with Template, and you can make any of these the default template, but by the default should be small objects millimeter. So if I double click on that, it will open up a new document, and this is where we start to see the differences between the Windows Rhino and the Mac. So Mac lets you have multiple documents open, and in the back here you can see the master practice is still open. So I'm going to go ahead and close that down and revert. And when I do that, it will close that model down. So now I'm in a brand new file, and in this file, I began it with the template, and the template is going to have for you default layers and default annotation styles. It's also going to have units already set up, and you can see that down here. We're in millimeters. So it's a very quick way to begin a new file. And when you look up at the top, you will notice that as you move your document around, the Mac window stays docked. So that's always up there at the top. Again, the organization of commands, file commands, curve commands, surface commands, solid commands. And those also parallel what you will see here on the tabbed toolbars. Now there's the tab toolbar that runs horizontally, and a lot of the toolbars are going to update the sidebar over here. So if I pick on Surface Tools is going to update with the loft command, surface from planar curves, surface from edge curves, and then along the top I have like fillet surface, an offset surface, rebuild surface. So these are considered the edit commands for surfaces. So you'll see that too with solid tools and then solid editing over here. And then drafting is another important one for this project. We have layouts, we have add detail, we have dimensions, we have display order control, and hatch. Now, if you go over to standard, you'll be back at the home position. And any command that you take will replace the sidebar with the command line. And that's another difference from running on Windows, is if you just take circle, then that area of the screen becomes the command line. So I'm going to clear these modeling aids off just so we're kind of back to default. Now there's one other command that I want to share with you called reset, and it's new in Rhino 8, and it lets you reset Rhino in these various ways back to the way it was when it installed. And if you go all the way back to a factory reset, then your screen will be back to the way, and all your settings that you've customized will be gone. And sometimes that's really helpful especially if you're trying to do a tutorial and your screen looks different than the person who's leading the tutorial. Hopefully they did a reset, but if your screen has been customized, that's a really great way to get you back. It also removes or unloads any plugins. So every once in a while, Matt and I get the question, I can't open Rhino or I can't open Grasshopper. It's Rhino's just closing down. That usually has to do with plugins. And if you can open Rhino, let's say it's the Grasshopper example, Grasshopper isn't opening, and you type in reset, it will unload all your Grasshopper plugins. And there are a lot out there, hundreds, thousands. So sometimes you just need to start clean and add the Grasshopper plugins back one at a time, and then figure out which one is messing Rhino up. Okay, so just be aware that your command line is over here. On the far left, you have the object snaps. The object snaps are point filters, and I typically have these three on. And the great thing about them, as I go to draw a line, they're going to snap onto existing geometry. Now, whether it's the center or the end point, that's what object snaps are used for. So accuracy and very efficient accuracy. Okay, so O-snaps are available unless you hold down the Alt key. It will temporarily disable them. So I'm trying to draw a circle. It'll snap to the end point or the midpoint. If I hold down the Alt key, it will temporarily disable them. Okay. There's also filters. We'll probably have the opportunity to talk about them when we do area. And then we have our viewports. Our viewports show the model in 3 parallel views and 1 perspective view. So if I go over here and take box, and I just make a box of any size, you'll see that that box exists in all of the viewports. Okay, and it's created on the current layer. So if I make the red layer current, and we'll get over here to panels in a moment. I'm just jumping ahead a little bit. If I make a box on that layer, then it will be assigned to that red layer. Now, construction, each viewport has its own construction plane. So if I take circle and I draw a circle here in the front viewport, it's on the front construction plane. And if I draw a circle here in the right viewport, it's on the right construction plane. So the viewport has its own grid and construction plane, but the layer is global. When I make a layer current, then all of the geometry, regardless of what detail you're in, will be created on that layer. Now, parallel views, of course, use the wheel mouse, and if you want to pan, you can use the right mouse button. The perspective view is a little bit different. If you use the right mouse, you will be rotating the view. If you hold the shift key down, then you will be able to pan. So shift for pan, and you can shift everywhere for pan. It won't mess you up in a parallel viewport, but it isn't required. The viewport also has its own display mode. So if I go up here under perspective and I come down to set view and I set view to, if I come down to display mode and I pick on shaded, then it will put the detail in shaded mode. Or if I pick on rendered, it will put the detail in rendered mode. So there's some specialty display modes like monochrome. Okay, so the display mode is determined by the viewport. So every viewport can have a display mode, not just perspective. So if I went up here to top, I could put it in monochrome. Okay, or I could just go back to wireframe. If you double click on the viewport, it will maximize to the screen. And that's where these tabs come in. You can go to top, front, right, and also layouts will bring up your layout panel here. And since I don't have a layout, it's going to ask me to add one, and I don't want to do that right now. You will also see this way far left to toggle the left sidebar. You don't want to keep that setting, but it is a way to very quickly clear the screen off and bring back the controls. Now, this is a very interesting feature because it was not on Windows 7, but in Rhino's Windows 8 it is. So this is, and there's one on the right side as well, so you can turn off the sidebar over here on the right side of the screen. Okay, so right and left to turn that area of the screen on and off. And this little hamburger button, we call it, shows you the last commands that you've run and what the result of the command was. If I needed to copy them or copy the area, I can go here to the little hamburger stack. You also get information about the construction plane and where the cursor is and what units you're in. You get the display here of what layer is current, but you can also make another layer current. And if you double click back on the viewport title, you will go back to that 4 viewport display. The object snaps, or I should say the grid snap and the other modeling display modes are listed here. We're going to use quite a few of them. And I think Windows just gave up and decided to move that taskbar over here. Let's see if I can get that back. I'll try not to hang out too much down there because I don't like to waste screen space. Let me make this a little bit smaller so I can go down to the bottom of the screen without getting to that pop-up taskbar. So we'll be looking at quite a few of these gumball auto seaplanes, really important to the exercise that we'll be doing. Now for the panels. And the panels, if you looked at an earlier version of Rhino, they were typically placed horizontal. And Rhino 8 takes the bold move to move them vertical, and that's because usually we can get more over here than in the horizontal space. So if nothing is selected and you go to properties, it tells you about the viewport that is active, and you can change the display mode here from property. So that's another way to do that other than going up to the menu. And if I pick an object, I can change the properties of the object, like put it on a different layer. I could also change the render material. Right now it's just using the material that's on the layer. So if objects are selected, the property panel is going to change to reflect the details about that object. Now, the other really important panel over here is the layers panel. And the layers panel is how you organize your model. It actually becomes the interface to your model. And we'll see that as we start modeling the floor plan. You can also arrange layers hierarchically. So hierarchically, that came out funny. But I can grab layer 3 and put it under layer 2, and it's now a hierarchical layer. It's related to layer 2 as a parent. So if I turn off layer 2, then layer 3 will go off at the same time. And that's another reason why we have hierarchical layers, is so we can very quickly turn off a whole group of layers. So if I take this box and I put it on layer 03, which is a hierarchical layer. How about layer 02? There we go, purple. If I turn off layer 02, then both of those layers are going to go off. And you're going to see extensive use of hierarchical layers in the exercise that we're doing. So what I'd like to have you do over here is right-click on any of the tabs, and you can open up block definitions now. We're going to use it later, so feel free to do that. But I'd like to have you scroll to tutorials. And let's start with the tutorials panel, because a very common question that Matt and I get is, where do you find the training guides for Rhino? And they are available inside of Rhino. And if you're just getting started with Rhino and you haven't done the user guide yet, that's where you want to start. So under user guide, you'll find that there's a PDF for Mac, and all you have to do is double click on it and it downloads the PDF user guide. And in the user guide, there's tons of examples. And notice how it says open tutorial model explode polysurface. So that means that I can go here to explode polysurface, and when I double click on it, it opens it so that we can work on it in Rhino. So that's a very important feature of the tutorials and documents that we have in Rhino. Now, after you've done the user guide, maybe you've done a few getting started, you're ready for a full foundational training. We do have the level 1 training. You can double click on this to open the guide. And again, when it refers to open up one Rails sweep, if you double click on it, it will open it in Rhino, and then you can do your practice for that exercise. So there's thousands of these between the two, between the three, I should say, the user guide, the level 1, the level 2. You'll be able to do a lot of exercises and training with Rhino on your own. Now, the one that I'd like you to find, the file here in level 1. So make sure you're in level 1 and scroll if it's off your screen. I know we had somebody in the Windows class that wasn't scrolling and didn't find the file called What is Rhino. Go ahead and double click on that, What is Rhino? And this file will open, and it has a really great sampling of all the geometry that you're going to find in Rhino. So curves, hatches, dimensions. The curves are Rhino's 2D object. The curve, when you pick on it, the control points appear. The control points can be used to modify that curve. Curves are important because they're used as input for surfaces. So if I pick on this curve here, I can modify it by pulling the control points to change its shape. And this is a free-form curve, which is degree 3 or higher. If I want to know specifically about this curve, I can go over to properties and details. And details tells me that it's a degree 3 curve. And in Rhino, and in math in general, degree 1 is a line or polyline, and that's the highest degree polynomial in the formula of that curve. A circle or an ellipse or an elliptical arc, those are degree 2. However, Rhino has a circle object, and if an object meets the criteria for a circle, it will display as a circle instead of degree 2. But circle, ellipses, elliptical arcs, those are all degree 2 curves. And then when we get to degree 3 and higher are more flexible curves, these are known for the surfaces that they create. So if I go up to surface and down to extrude curve straight, it will extrude that curve into a surface on the current layer, which is the dimension layer. So we probably want to make a different layer current and then extrude that curve. So if I go down here, I can pick on the surfaces layer to be the current layer, and I can either pre-select the curve or post-select the curve. So if I go up to surface and extrude straight, if I turn on record history, then there will be a relationship between the curve and that surface. So what does that mean? A relationship. If I change this curve by either control point editing here, you can see, or just dragging the curve, you can see how the surface updates. So there is a relationship between this surface and that curve. So what happens if I drag the surface? Rhino is going to give me a warning. It's going to break history. Maybe it's okay. Maybe I'm going to be turning the surface into a solid with the offset surf command, and I don't want the history anymore. There is a point in time where history is not desirable, so we can let it go. But I'm going to cancel to keep that history relationship. And if I grab the curve and I move it, you can see that they go together like a team. Now, the other modeling aid that I want to point out here is called the gumball. And the gumball will give you a widget, and you can use the widget to move the curve. So I'm going to turn on gumball down here, and I very rarely turn gumball off. So it's that important of a tool. It was added in Rhino 5 and fundamentally changed the way we edit in Rhino. Now, not without keeping the technical options, but they're still there. Move, copy, scale, rotate, those are still there. But I can do those functions with the gumball very easily on any geometry. So if I want to move the curve, all I have to do is drag the gumball arrows. I can even move it off the construction plane, and I can undo back through those moves. I can type in a number like 10, okay, and I can move it in this direction, 20. So it is a relative move, and it will use a distance for you to move the object either positive or negative. Okay, if you move and you tap the Alt key, you can create a copy of that geometry. So if I grab that rectangle or square, tap the Alt key, I can create a copy of it. We can also rotate, and you can rotate at an angle, or you can just rotate the arc. So you can type in 45 degrees, or you can just rotate until it looks good. Now we do have ortho. If I go here to ortho, tap the right mouse button. Right now ortho is set to 90. I want to pick on ortho and set it to 45. So that way, when we do a rotate, if ortho is on, we'll be rotating at increments of 45 degrees. Okay. And if I hold the shift key down, when ortho is on, it temporarily toggles it from on or off. Okay, so shift will temporarily toggle ortho, alt will temporarily toggle object snaps. Okay, so we can draw curves, and up here you can see some of the curves that we've drawn. We can draw them as polylines or lines. We can snap to the grid. So if I turn grid snap on, I can snap to the grid to draw the curve. If I have a distance that I want to enter for the length of the curve, I can just type it in. So I can take polyline, pick a start point, and if I want to draw, let's say 10 units, I can type it in. Okay, and our units are millimeters. What if I want to draw 1 inch? I can type in the inch mark and Rhino does the conversion. What if I know centimeters? I can type in cm to do centimeters. Okay, and how about meters? All I need is an m, so that's quite a bit longer. The default is millimeters since that's the unit of the model. I can even put in the foot mark, but I'll type in 1 inch and Rhino takes care of doing the conversion. Otherwise, if I just type in the number, then Rhino will be doing the units of the model. So keep that in mind. One thing I like to do when I'm done drawing is throw a dimension down. It's similar to doing analyze distance, but it sticks around. It's the same number of steps. So what I like to do, and I'll make that dimension layer current, is to go to drafting linear dimension, pick 2 points, and create that dimension. Okay, and it's in the current units of the model, and that way I always know what that distance is. Okay, so what if I wanted to change this distance? This is where the control points come in. So I can type in this case, it's a -10. And when I move it -10, the dimension updates. So once I get that dimension, I begin to really be able to dial in the unit that or the distances that I'm drawing to, and get tangible proof that what I'm ending up with is at the proper scale. And when you draw and model in Rhino, it's full size. So whether I'm doing this little widget here that's 30 units, or I'm doing a building that's 50 feet long, we are modeling it full size. And that's what enables the virtual build. And that's what we're doing today here in a few moments. I just want to show you one more thing here before we bomb into that model. The poly surface has multiple surfaces associated with it, and it forms a closed volume. And if I go up to analyze, I can go to mass property and volume and get the volume in the current unit. Or if I take the volume command first and select a different unit here, like I'm going to do square foot. And I pick on, and I can even pick on all three of these, then it gives me the unit, and maybe square foot wasn't a good choice here because these are really small objects. I'm going to do square inch. So something other than the model. If I do all three of these, they equate to about 0.22 cubic inch. And if you're doing these in gold, that's a lot of gold. But if you're doing them in concrete, that's very, very little concrete. So Rhino has a feature called subobject selection. So what if I wanted to bump this face and make this a bigger box? If I hold down Shift plus the Mac command key, it will select just that face. Shift, Command, I can escape and pick just Shift Command on this side. Okay, so I can select a face or an edge. If I Shift Command and pick on the edge, then I can change the shape of that box. Okay, Shift Command. Great. Shift Command. How about scale? I can scale with the gumball. If I hold down the Shift, it will scale uniformly. If I just drag in one direction, then it will only scale, okay, on that axis. Okay? And that's true for any of these. So if I hold down Shift and Command, pick here, I can move that out. Shift and Command, pick on that face, and I can pull that. Okay. Well, I've set up a situation here where this is actually probably not planar anymore, but let's say we want to move on one of these planar sides and draw a circle. Okay. Right now, I'm drawing a circle on the current construction plane, which is down here, and I want to draw a circle up here. So let's pretend this is 3 years ago, and I'm in Rhino 7. We'll go up here to Set C-Plane, 3-point, and I'll pick here, here, and here. Okay, so now I'm on that construction plane. The shaded viewport grid does me a really big favor by showing me that, and I can draw on that construction plane. Okay, and if you look over at your panels and you right click and open up the named C-plane, you can save this as C-plane 1. Okay, so right click over here, it's called Name C-plane, open it up, and this button here on Name C-plane will let you save that C-plane. So how does that help? Well, I can double click on top and go back to the top, and then I can double click on C-plane 1 and go back here. I can add text or modify the geometry on that C-plane. Okay. Well, Rhino 8 made that light years easier. So take a look at the Rhino 8 way. And it involves an option down here called Auto C-Plane. And when you pick on Auto C-Plane, you can sub-object select, which is Shift Command. And when I pick on that side, that's now the active construction plane. Cool, huh? Shift, Command, and pick. That's now the active construction plane. And if I'm going to draw, I can take my circle command now, and I'm drawing on that construction plane. I snapped off of it with the second point. So as I pick my second point, I'll make sure Alt is on so I don't snap off of that construction plane. And I can save that if I want an easy way to get back to it, and it will be CP2. Okay. Okay, so now we have seaplane 1, we have seaplane 2, and we have the ability to move anywhere, and you don't have to save. There's no mandate here to save. Okay, so you can just draw, and then again, watching those O-snaps, because they may pick on something now that we've got a bunch of stuff in this model and pull you off the construction plane. And that will be very important to the next model that we're working on. And let's take a look at a few other things that we're going to put to use. If you pick on this curve, notice how it auto seaplane sets that curve. I can use the gumball extrude and extrude that away from the surface, okay? Or I can pick on it and I can use this little bar here called cut, and I can emboss or cut that into the solid. Okay, so we just took that and we pushed into that solid. Okay, let's do that again. Let's pick on this one and let's grab the little cutter and pull away, which will emboss. And I looks like, let me hold down the Alt key. I keep pulling back to the construction plane on that one. It could be planar, so I think I'll turn planar off. And let's see, I know another way, it's really good to show this another way from the solid tools. There's something called push-pull. And push-pull is essentially what the gumball is trying to do. And I'll pull that off. And that seemed to do a little bit better job as I was pulling away from the geometry. So keep that in mind. We're going to use that in our exercise that is coming right up. Now you can keep this open. But if you probably won't interfere too much, I'm going to go back to my file finder, and I can double click to open master bath. I can also, a couple options that you have here. You can drag and drop it on top of Rhino and pick open file. Okay, so here we are. We're ready to get started. The layer list is pretty extensive. It's very similar to beginning a model with a template. And this is, of course, very helpful because we already have the layers, we have the names, the colors, the materials even. So you will be able to do this after you've created a couple projects. You will find that there are likely a common denominator to the layers and the materials that you're using. And if you can save off your own template, or at least begin a model from that model and save as, you'll have a great jump start. So let's take a look where we are. And we're on a layer called Walls Proposed. And we're going to add on a master bath. So we're going to be pushing out of the exterior wall and adding some new square footage here to this building. Probably a residence. We don't know because I'm making this up. Okay, so but it's very realistic. We can, I think, pretty easily say it is a single family residence. Okay, So I have a layer called walls proposed, and we want to draw the outline of the area that we'll be working with. So I'm going to go ahead and take polyline, and the polyline I want to snap to this point, and I have the point ready for you so that we can all start this at the correct place. So a little bit of help there as we get started, but it'll be very important later that you're not just out in outer space here, as we have some things in the model that are already done that are going to show up in the right place if you begin here. So notice the point O snap, and when I pick on that point, I'm ready to draw my line. And I want this line to be 12 feet long. So notice the unit of the model is inches. So when I type in 12, I need to put the foot mark. Otherwise, I'm going to get 1 foot. And if you're typing in one of the meter equivalents, make sure you put in an M after that. But I'm going to type in 12 feet. And when I do that, I don't really have a lot of feedback from Rhino as to where I am. And I'm going to have you do something here so that you can get more feedback from Rhino I'll hit escape, in the form of a cursor tooltip. So there are two settings in Rhino: document settings, which is under file, and Rhino settings, which is under Rhino 8, which is essentially the options command. And this is brand new to Rhino 8. We get options, and options brings up your Rhino system settings. And in here, there's modeling aids, and off of modeling aids, this is where we set, or could have set, our ortho default. So you might want 15, you might want 45. I'm going to keep 45 so that as we rotate with ortho on, we get increments of 45. But I'm going to go over here to cursor tooltips and turn on distance and relative point and angle. Okay, so distance, relative point, angle, and all I have to do is pick the X to close that down. Now watch how this changes. Okay, so now as I'm drawing, I can get some validation that 12 feet is where I want to be. So see how helpful that is? I like that on. Sometimes you may feel like it gets in the way, but you will have to go turn it back off for your system. This will be on for every model that you're working in. Okay, 13 foot 6.5, and I need a point there, not a comma. And that's all I need to put in. Okay, that's 13 feet 6.5 inches. So it assumes that anything after the foot mark is an inch. I can do decimal or I can do fractional. We have the distance that we want. Now here's something to be a little bit careful of. And I think I messed up in the last class by snapping and pulling the polyline off a planer. So let's make sure and do 12 feet here, and then pick, and then enter, and we're done. So we have the outside exterior outline of this new proposed space. So I'm going to assume the wall thickness is 4 inches here. Let's go ahead and offset it by 4. So when I offset this polyline curve, we'll go up to curve and down to offset curve. And if you watch the command line, it's just the offset command. And there's something special that I want you to do here. Under cap in the command line, make sure flat is set. And then also, if it doesn't say 4, type in 4. And by having cap set to flat, it will add the little ends to this open curve, and we will end up with a closed curve. So let's pick, And there we go. Okay, so we do have a closed curve. It might be nice if this reported whether it was planar or not. We should wish list that, Matt. When we do an extrusion here, we'll extrude into a closed poly surface. And a lot of times we get the question when I do an extrude from the solid menu, why isn't my geometry closed? And that there's two conditions that have to be true here, closed and planar. If it's not planar, it won't be a closed poly surface. And you will probably need to project to the construction plane or project to a surface to end up with a planar curve that you can work with. But since we were so careful, let's go ahead and extrude this into, we'll extrude it into a wall. We can do that first, or we can do some of the interior walls. One thing I want to show you is that we do have a curve, and it's not locked by layer, it's locked by geometry. So there's two options for locking a layer, and one is locking the layer, and the other is locking the geometry. So I'm going to go up here to lock, which is by object, and tap the right mouse button. And when I do, I can see that there's a curve on the tile floor layer, but it's a little bit off from our inside curve. So remember, Shift and Command, I can pick that up and just modify that side by moving it in. And I'm going to use this curve to do the tile floor. So it's now ready. I don't really need it right now, but this curve appears below that one. But under drafting, there is an option for draw order. And draw order will let you pull this curve to the front. And then when you do this one, isn't quite as bothersome. It's just a 2D display trick. It has nothing to do with 3D. Just like when you're in PowerPoint and you're moving something from the top to the back. That's all this is, draw order control. Okay, so let's add a couple interior walls, and I want to show you how to do that with Smart Track. And Smart Track will let us locate these rectangles from where our dimensions are given, and that's why I showed you that PDF. If you're curious at all where I got the dimensions from, you can refer to that PDF. So if I go back to standard, I want to draw a rectangle, but I don't want it to start. Notice how center is being pretty noisy here. So I'm going to turn that off. I don't want it to be at the center, I don't want it to be at the end of this wall. I want it to be located from that end. So with Smart Track on, if I take the rectangle and I guide my cursor over that endpoint, I can slowly guide it away, which means I'm measuring from that point. And I'm going to type in 3 feet and then enter. So now you can see the interior wall is at the right location. It's 3 feet from that corner. So what else do we know about the interior wall? First, as we move to the X, it's a positive 4 units. So I'll enter that. And the length of it is negative on the Cartesian system. So if I type in minus 4'8", it's going up, not down into the plan. So I can correct that by typing in negative 4'8". And all I have to do is enter, and I now have that interior wall. Let's do another one, and then I'm going to show you an easier way to do this if Smart Track is just not something you're ready for. So I'm going to, Smart Track is persistent, it's on. I'll drag my cursor over this corner. I'll slowly drag it away. And again, I'm going to type on this wall here 3 foot 10.5. Okay, so I have to have room for the vanity, which I wanted to mention and forgot earlier. 3 foot, there we go, 10.5. That looks a little better. I forgot to mention we did the vanity last year in another getting started. So if you want to backtrack and do that, it's in the album for the Rhino 8 for Mac getting started. And that is what led to this whole idea for the getting started. After we did that vanity, people were saying, okay, now I want to do the bathroom. And then that led to this getting started. Okay, in the X direction, a -3 feet. And let's see if we can get that lined up here. X direction, -3 feet should do it. And it looks like it did. And the height of the wall is a +4, and that should do it. Okay, so let's say that you want to do this another way, okay? And you don't want to use Smart Track. You can turn that off. This is what you could do. You can just draw the rectangle. So I'm going to go -3 feet, enter, +4, enter. And once you get the rectangle, you can move it. And in this case, it will be 3 foot 10, 3 foot 10.5. And there we have the wall. So you don't have to use that, and it looks like this might have been 3 foot 10, not 3 foot 10.5. So I'll go ahead and bump that down, maybe, I don't know, I'll keep it. These lines don't bother me too much. They're just to give us the impression that that's where the sloping is going to be, and just something the tile layer will need to know. Okay, so we have the interior walls and we have the exterior wall. Let's go back to the perspective view, and I want to move those curves to a curve layer. So I'm going to create a sub layer and call it curve. And when I put my cursor over walls proposed, I can right click and select objects. And that way it only selects the objects that are on that layer. And I want to move those to the walls curve layer. And one way to do that is here. The other way to do that is down here. You can just pick on them and move them to the wall curve layer. And that way, when we get ready to do the actual solid walls, the curves will be kind of tucked away there on their own layer. So if we wanted to control the visibility separate, that can happen. Okay, right click over the curve layer and select objects. So those are the curves that we want selected. Wall proposed is the current layer. Up under solid, extrude planar curve straight, and the height of the wall interior space will be 8 feet. So I'm going to type in 8 with the foot mark and then enter. And then let's take a look at this in shaded mode. So we have our curves. It looks like some of the curves are showing through here when they're coplanar with the surface. I'm not sure if that is the way it should be or not, but one thing we could do there is to go to shaded and make sure that we have the defaults, but it's not going to bother us. Let's go ahead and put some windows in, and then we'll put the doors. And then we will put the fixtures, the tub, and the tub controls the toilet and the shower controls, and then we'll put our vanity. And you can see at this point how fast things start to move. Since we're adding windows and doors, I want to be on the window and door layer. And let's make the block, there we go. Let's make the block panel current. And one of the blocks that we're going to be using here is called a double window, 5 foot by 2 foot double window. You could see an image of it down here. It's already embedded in the file, and we just are going to insert it onto the wall where we want it to go. Now, one thing to know about blocks is they're always best inserted on the top construction plane. So when we start to draw, we'll be using that shift command to make the auto C-plane active. But when we're inserting a block, being on the top construction plane and having auto C-plane off is really important. So we have that done. To insert this double window, all you really have to do is drag it and then pick an insertion point. And when you do, you can see I picked the end of the wall, and now I can move that into place. Now, this is a design. I may be adding that window, and I'm not exactly sure where I want it yet, and that is okay. We'll use our gumball to put it more towards the wall side and less towards the shower side. We can use the gumball in the front view to really dial in that location. And then we can dimension this later when we get over to the layout. Now, one thing about the block right now, if I hide it, you will see that the wall is still solid. So let's take a look at a way that we're going to remedy that. We're going to cut through the wall. And I am on a layer called window door. I think I'll make the window frame layer current. I just want a little bit different color. And how are we going to cut through the wall? Well, first thing we want to do is turn auto C-plane on, hold down shift and the command key, and I need to make that the active viewport. Now, I'm sorry, I make that the active construction plane for the viewport. I can draw parallel to the construction plane. I just can't skew off of it. So what I want to do for the window is draw a rectangle that's going to be about where the wall will be cut through. And the trim, that's where the window frame will go. The trim will be on the outside. I think this is pretty realistic. So there's the that black line. It's probably a little bit light, but that black curve, it's closed. It's ready to cut through the wall. So using the gumball, I'm going to grab the little cut widget here and drag it through the wall. And immediately you notice that the window layer becomes active. Okay, so now I can see through that window. And if I turn off the window, you can see we've got a hole in our wall. And that makes me feel a lot better. Take a look at what happens in render preview mode. Okay, I've got obscure glass on that layer. And so we kind of get a look that we're seeing out that window. We'll go back into render mode in a little bit. Let's do a little more work here. And I want to cut through some openings here to let some more light into the shower. We may even want to do a skylight again to bring some more light into the shower. So I want to take a rectangle. and I want to draw on this wall. But notice right now I'm back to the top construction plane. So I need to Shift Command, pick on the wall. Auto seaplane is still on. Okay, so we're still on using that auto seaplane very effectively here. I'll pick rectangle, I'll pick on the corner, and I'm going to use Smart Track from the midpoint. And if I turn Smart Track off, I'll turn it back on again. I don't remember doing that. Okay, and so I can bring that down now, and I want a window that is, let's say, I'm just 14, enter by 14. Okay, so we can go ahead and move that into place. I need enough room over here for framing, and I also need enough room in the middle here for the shower controls. So I'll be able to pull all these dimensions off of our technical drawing so I can be able to tell the contractor exactly where it's going. So I'll pick this curve and mirror it over the midpoint of the wall. Okay. So I now have windows that we're going to cut through that wall. And it's pretty easy to take the curves, select both of them. You can hold the Shift key down and just pull them through the wall. Okay. And these curves are also going to be moved more or less in the middle of the wall. And we're going to add glass to these openings, and it'll be obscure glass. So we're going to have to make the obscure glass the current layer. And to turn those into surfaces, we'll go up to surface and down to from planar curves. If you want to know where these commands are located on the toolbar, take a look at help. So if you make the help panel current and you go up to surface from planar curves, you'll see that it shows you what the button looks like and tells you where it's located. So if I went here to surface tools, I could pick it from right here. This is super valuable. If you want to use the tools, then the toolbars, and being able to find where those buttons are. The menus, of course, are quicker during a presentation, but you can find those out for yourself over here on that help menu. Now let's go back to render mode, and you can see we're seeing through the obscure glass there to the shower, and that looks really good. There's one more detail that we want to add here, and I do niches a lot. So I have a block of common niche sizes. They're essentially a window, but there's no glass in them. They're framed up very similar to a window, and that way they're probably as expensive as a window when you get done, but they're totally worth it as a design feature and an organizational feature once the bathroom is in use. So I have a niche here to bring in, and I think having it on the window layer is probably just fine. I'll go ahead and make the window door layer the current layer, and let's grab the niche, and you can right click on it, and not to, you can edit the name, but you can right click to insert. Insert is a little different. Now what's worrying me here, and I can see it's already messing up, is the construction planes. Let's turn auto seaplane off. So we're back to the world top, and let's do that again. So right click. A lot of these modeling aids are super helpful in the right situation, but a lot of times they can be uh, annoying in the and not useful in the right situation. So this is something I'm not quite sure what is happening. So there's some input coming here, which is a little bit on the strange side. So if I do insert and I pick here, I have to go over here to 1 and rotation, have to make sure 0 is there, either enter it. And in this case, I had to type it in. And now we'll move that into place. I want it to favor the bench side, and I want it to be right below the glass. So if there are height challenged people using the shower, I want to make sure they can reach the shampoo. So we'll bring it down to about here, and I want it to be, like I said, to favor the bench side. So we'll be able to dial that in. I won't cut through the wall until we do the bench. So we'll be ready to make sure that the location is okay before we cut in the wall. We can change it after. It's just a little more work. And since we only, want to cut through the wall once, we can wait just a little bit and we'll grab that opening. And when we cut through, then we'll be able to see all of the components of the niche. So we have doors and windows and a bench to add. So let's go ahead with the door, and I want to add the door here into the water closet toilet room. So I'm going to go up here and type in door. And when I do that, it filters my blocks. And all I see here are doors, which is great. I don't have to look at that long list. And I have a door with a glass panel that I want to add here. So I'll go ahead and right click to insert, and I'll bring in the door. Sometimes bringing it in up here on the plan view can make it a little bit easier. But when I do this, I want to stay on the ground. And when I go to the top view, it brings me up above on the upper plane. So I'm going to stay here in the perspective view so that the door ends up on the ground. Enter for 1, enter for 0. Not that I couldn't move it, but it's certainly nice when you add a block and it comes in at the exact location that you want it. And notice that, we can add a transom window here above the door to add some light or some ventilation, but we can also extend this wall out. So let's do auto seaplane, and we'll pick on that wall. If we're in shaded view, it will show up a little bit better that we're on that wall. And I want to use push-pull. So to use push-pull, I need a curve that's planar to the surface. And this will use to pull the wall across. So now that I have that rectangle on that surface, back to solid tools, push pull, pick on that area, and just like we were out in the field building this, we're going to make sure that that is a closed wall. Beautiful. And all that was done courtesy of push pull. Okay, let's add the shower. Actually, I'll put the shower door in here just a little bit. Let's turn off auto seaplane, and I want to work on the shower bench. And the shower bench will come in on the floor layer. I want it to be on the same layer as the tile floor. So go under floors, find tile floor, and we're going to draw a curve. And one way we can do this is with our standard rectangle. Now, I like a triangular bench. You may like a rectangle, but I'll turn this into a triangle pretty quickly here. So I can use the object snaps and Smart Track to pick over here. I actually want it to be a little bit smaller, so I'll type in 22 for the length and the width. And when I do that, it pops out over here, which really wasn't where I wanted it, but I'll go ahead and move that with the move command back. Now, if I were a little more careful and I typed in -22, it would have ended up here. Okay, so let's look at turning this into a triangular bench. All I have to do is highlight this control point and hit delete, and now I have a triangular bench. So this will be the lower part of the bench, and I need two of these curves, one for the quartz top and the other for the bench. So I'll go to Transform, Scale, 2D, and I'm going to scale from here to here, and I want that to be 24. So by picking, and I didn't do copies, so we get to do that again. Pick the curve, and you can right click now and pick Scale 2D, and make sure when you pick the object to scale, and it offers you copy, you put the check mark in copy, and we want this length here to be 24. So a little bit of an overhang there, and we're done. So we now have two curves, one for the bench, one for the quartz, and the height is going to be at 18 inches. So I'll move them 18 inches above the construction plane. Okay, so let's solid, extrude planar curve straight, and let's bring this down to the floor. And let's take the outer curve and make the quartz layer current. By being a little more careful here about what the current layer is, I won't have to do as much changing of a layer. And I'm going to extrude straight. This is kind of fun because we buy quartz in centimeters. This will be a 2 centimeter top unless I happen to have 3 centimeters left over from the Vanity and I just want to use it. A lot of times I'll just buy remnants for a small space so I don't have to store a full any leftover quartz that isn't used on a project, which could be a widowmaker or widower maker, however you want to think of it. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. We have a bench, and it is on the tile floor layer. And actually, I need to put this, not the tile floor layer, I need to put it on the shower floor layer. So I'm going to change this bench to the shower floor layer. There we go. That's what I expected to see, is the shower floor, not the tile floor. And let's take a look at doing the tile floor now. And we do have a curve that will be the tile floor, and we can turn that into a surface on the tile floor layer. So I'll make that current and either go to your Surface Tools toolbar and pick planar curve or take it from the surface menu. And when I turn that into a planar curve and there's already tile material on that layer, we are done. We have our tile floor. I'm rotating it 45 degrees, which I think makes a small space look bigger. It is more expensive, both in product and installation. So you have to be a little bit careful with what looks good and what your budget parameters are. I want the shower to stand out as being different, although this is a real popular look, is to run the floor right into the shower. But for this design option, I'm going to split the shower area out. And back on standard, if you put your cursor over split, tap the right mouse button, you can split this at that wall in both directions. So toggle and then pick on the separator wall. Okay, so what do we have? We have this piece and this piece, which I can join together with this puzzle piece. And I can merge those faces if I want to turn them into one surface off the push-pull toolbar. There is an option here, merge all coplanar faces. And when I do, it's just like a trimmed surface. So I'll leave that one out so that you can see it. And you can see all of those little dividing points went away. Now, this surface, I need to move to the proper layer. And I can do that down here by picking on shower floor, or I can do that from properties, or even by right-clicking on the layer. And I haven't saved this yet, so I'm going to hold down the option key here and pick Save As, and save this as Master Bath Class Model. Okay, we do have the versions that work pretty nice here. And in fact, I'm usually getting dinged by Mac to stop saving, but I only want to use that when things aren't working. Okay, so do you like the location of the niche? You can use Smart Track to help you line it up with the end of the quartz with the move command. I can make sure it's lined up there, not only with the quartz, but the bottom of the window, which I didn't really pick the top of the window. So if I wanted to do that all in one step, I could take off the bottom of the window as a tracking line, take off either the bench or the quartz, and line up the niche here. Okay, and we want to cut through the niche. The niche block actually has a curve in it, and we can pull it out if we want to use it. But what we need to do is edit the block and remove that curve. Okay, so that is an option. But if we want to do that, we have to be able to pick on that block. And sometimes the other surface gets in the way. That's where having a wireframe on can be helpful. And I have a curve in here. Any of these planar curves, I'm going to remove it so it's part of the model and apply it, go back to shaded mode, and now I can use that curve, maybe even wireframe. I can use that curve that I removed to be part, or to use it to clip. So let's see, curve, remove object. It said it oh, I didn't apply. My fault. Apply. Okay, now we should be in good shape. Shaded, and we want to pick on the curve. And it's getting, again, a little confused with all the surfaces. If you go back to wireframe, you'll be able to grab it. Okay, and now that you have the curve, use your cutter and cut through the wall. And we can see now, hopefully, let's do a shaded. Yeah, there we go. So we cut through that wall. We have our niche. We have our wall that has the area removed. That's a good way to see it. And we can go back to rendered mode. So the shower's looking pretty good. I think we can add the fixture and the door, and then we can call the closet, or we can call the shower done. So we do have a shower filter. I think the filters for both the layers and the blocks is one of the #1 features that you can use out of Rhino 8. Rhino 7 doesn't have this. It doesn't have a block panel for #1, but even the layer panel doesn't have a filter. So let's go ahead and grab the shower controls, and I can just drag them over here and set the shower controls down. Now I do have to make sure, let's turn auto seaplane off. That part looks pretty good. Okay, let's see if it's going to let me drag. It's having a little bit of a hiccup there. So let's go ahead and right click on it and insert. Yeah, that seems to be okay. I want to insert it up here. I don't want Smart Track on. I'm going to go ahead and move it later. So I'll pick the insertion point. I'm going to pick over here on 1, and rotation. I think we could probably just type in 180 here. That looks good. And we'll move this now into location. And the ISO curves on the window give me a really good target for the shower controls. There's also a glass shower door. Now, one thing that happened here, because I wasn't careful about layer, it went in on the tile floor layer, and I wanted it to be on the fixtures layer. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to the fixtures layer. And let's take a look over here, make sure it is our current layer for fixtures, and it is under the tub toilet category. Okay, so let's go back to block and let's add our glass panel. Block, insert. I want this coming in on the floor. So I'll pick down here on the end of the wall, scale factor of 1, being a little careful about this because there's something strange there that is happening. I'll go ahead and rotate that around, and let's hope it doesn't get weird. And it doesn't. The shower door comes in. It's got the obscure glass. We can kind of see through it. The shower's looking pretty well done. Let's get the tub and the filler. So again, using the filter up here, tub and filler. For the tub, we can go ahead and drag it in and drop it over here, or we can right click to insert, pick a location. You can use your Smart Track. Make sure the scale factor is set to 1, rotation of 0 is fine, and then just grab it and center it in that space. Now we are going to need room for the tub filler over here in the corner, but I don't want it too far away from the window. And I'd like to have it centered. It may encroach a little bit too far on the on the shower. So let's just place it here. I think that's a good location. And the tub filler is coming in next. So let's insert a tub filler, pick a location, scale factor of 1. And for the rotation angle, we just want to make sure the angle is going to fill it in the tub. Now, it did snap on the upper end of the wall, so that's fine. We'll just use gumball to bring it down onto the floor. And again, it's really helpful to have 4 views and watching them all the time. But having gumball there to just move it down is totally appropriate. Okay, we've got to add the toilet block and the vanity blocks and then some wainscoting, and we're closing in on this project. So let's go ahead to type in, actually let's clear the filter. You can probably, there's only one toilet in this block list, so you can grab it and drag it. Something got tweaked here as I drag it. Thinks I'm selecting layers, so it's gotten somehow, like I said, tweaked. So that's okay. We'll just use insert. And again, I want to bring it in down here, but take a look where it's coming in from the center. So I'm going to have to move it anyway. And rotation angle, 0. Okay, so where did this guy go? It is on the fixtures layer, and it is reflecting the material of that layer. So I'm going to put it back on the tub toilet layer, not unless you want a brass fixture here. So let's grab both of these and put them on the tub toilet layer. There we go. Okay. Vanity is next to come in. Like Matt shared with you, it is something you can build on its own, but we have it here ready to insert into this model. I'll make the vanity layer current. Feel free to backtrack and do your own. It's another fun model that uses push-pull, and we will go to block, and we're looking for the vanity, which is actually linked in. So there's an external file that it's referring to, and we'll right click on it and insert. And as the block starts to come in, we could use Smart Track here, or if I put it here, I'll have to move it in 2 directions. So if we had something reasonable to track from, then we may be able to rotate that around. And there is a case where it took the right click as an enter. I'll just put in a scale factor of 1, and rotation angle, I want to rotate it vertically. And we can go back here to wireframe. And not only are we going to move that into place, but we're going to mirror it on the other side. So we want to make sure it clears the door and the wall. We may run that quartz right up to the wall, but for right now it's coming in on the vanity. Transform mirror, we'll mirror it over the midpoint, and depending on which surface or poly surface you get, hopefully this isn't bumping into the wall, and actually it looks tight, but it looks okay. So we've got both of those in. Let's take a look at doing the wainscoting. It actually goes pretty quick, and then we'll turn on the rest of the model. Turned off the curve layer so we could separate out things a little bit. I think you'll like the way we do the wainscoting. It's super efficient. It may not have been something that you've thought about if you've had to add tiling to a wall, but I'll make the wainscoting layer current. Okay, and I want to copy the surface of this wall. So I'll go up to Solid and down to Extract Surface, and we'll extract this surface as a copy. Okay, and when we do that, as a copy, it's a separate surface, and I'll go ahead and bump it out by 0.1, and I'll put it on the wainscoting layer so that you can see what we've done here. Okay, so we still preserved the wall layer, and now we have an extra layer. The poly surface was the wall that is that surface. Okay, so we need to trim that surface down. So if you go back to split, trim, similar commands, same code, our developers will tell you, I'll right click on split, and I'm going to toggle to the U direction, and I'm going to split at the height of the window. And I'll pick on that surface and delete it. And now we have our tiles wainscoting tile. I like to do one more split here, and I extract the edge curve. So I'll duplicate the edge curve, and I'll take the duplicate and I'll move it by a -5. Okay, and I'll use that to split this surface. And I want to add just a little bit more detail. Okay, I want to take this smaller surface and put it on the quartz layer. So we'll have a little bit of a band up here for our wainscoting. I don't need that curve anymore, but I do want to group these together. Now they're not a block, but they will be selected as one. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy, and we'll copy that over to this wall. So if I tap the Alt key, you'll see that we now have wainscoting in the water closet room, the toilet room, and we'll mirror that over to the other side so you can see how fast this gets started. Here I want the endpoints, and then I want to snap on the midpoint. That's something that Smart Track will do for you now. Endpoint, endpoint, and then midpoint will show between those two endpoints. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. And just to keep the area analysis accurate, I am going to mirror this and then scale it. And because these are linear, we can very easily scale them to fit any wall with scale 1D. Okay, and that way our area calculations are going to be correct. If I just ran it through, it would be a little off, not too bad, but we'll get a little closer this way. Okay, let's do mirror again. Transform, mirror, and I'm going to pick here and here. and I want to run that along that entire wall. So let's do scale 1D, pick here and go all the way down to the shower wall. Okay, and we're going to do something fun with the shower wall. Let's go ahead and mirror it. Mirror 45, I think, is a really great way to copy, and that goes a little bit far, so we need to scale this back. And again, scale 1D, or you can use that sub edge selection, whichever you want to do. We just have to make sure, now that we've got the vanity there, let's see, sub-object selection is a little bit more difficult in this rendered mode. Okay, let's pick here for scale. Hold the cursor down just a little bit longer to get to that menu. I think that will work. We're going to bring that inside the shower. Wonder if I have. It's being a little bit stubborn, just since there's so many things here that it can pick on. Now, let's see if we can bring, yeah, you can see how it's skewed the way it's scaling. So let's see if we can turn off Smart Track and then just snap on that. And Smart Track may have been giving us a little bit of trouble. Okay, so that works there. And we're going to do one more of these. And I'm going to sub-object select this or ungroup, whichever works best here. Now, it looks like I may have had two groups. So sub-object select this one surface, and we're going to mirror it over the midpoint of this edge. So transform and mirror, and we want to be, again, at the midpoint here. There we go. So this will give us the upper edge of the shower wall. If you are bringing the tile to the ceiling, then you can use your gumball here to help scale that so it fills the entire space. Now we have a little bit more trimming to do with this curve. Just standard trim is probably enough. Okay, and the last thing to do is to mirror this over to the other end of the wall. We can group those together, and we are almost done. Mirror from here to here. Again, it extends. Now this one, what we may want to do here, because of the top surface, is just do an untrim to bring that back to whole. There we go. That looks good. And then let's scale this down in whatever view isn't going to give us much trouble here. And I'll scale from here to here. And it doesn't look like it's skewed. Hold the Alt key down to make sure we're not snapping, and just bring it to the edge of that wall. Okay, great. So we've got our tile wainscoting, which I think is very wonderful. Makes our model look really good. There is a layer called Done. Go ahead and turn it on. This will give you your walls, your ceilings, a few more fixtures. If you want, you can now turn the ceiling layer off. There's also can lights. You can turn them off. And the last thing that I want to do is cut through a couple clipping planes. Let's say just 2 or 3 of them, and then we will be done. I think once you see how to do one, you'll be able to do more, definitely. So at this point, even working on the model, you can see how the surfaces get in the way. Rhino 8 has a really great feature called clipping sections, and these clipping sections are going to be available both in model and on the layout. So I have to make a layer. Notice I made a sub layer. I can bump that one out and call it clipping plates or sections, whichever you like better. Let's give it a color, red, magenta, something really easy to see, and let's make it current. Okay. And what I want to do now is under drafting sections, pick create. And it's looking at the entire model unless you specify certain objects that you want to cut. So notice it says enter for all. I'll go ahead and do that. And I want to create a clipping section, but I want to face the tub. So I'll go ahead and flip, and I'll create a clipping section here. Okay, and then I'll rotate to the Y direction and create a clipping section towards the shower. So I'll go ahead and flip, and we'll look at the shower, and then I need one more clipping section, and that will be to clip on the top construction plane, but we'll do that here in a moment. Notice how it clips the top viewport. And if I move these, then you'll see that the clipping changes. Okay, so you may want to select both of those clipping planes and turn off the top viewport so it doesn't clip, but clip the perspective view. And maybe you only want one of those to clip the perspective view. Okay, so these are also oversized. You can use your gumball to scale them back so that they're easier to work in this area. They are a plane, so even though they may look like they're not clipping through our entire room, they are. They are an infinite clipping plane unless you limit them in some way. And I want to go up to sections and create, and we want to create a clipping plane for all, and you can make a clipping plane and then rotate it. I'm going to select C plane here because I want it pointing down, and I'll create one plane, and all I have to do here is scale this so that it's a little bit more visible, and I'll unassign it from the top and assign it to the perspective. Okay. Now, if I take this one and uncheck it, you'll get a little bit better idea what it's doing. The clipping plane, though, is removing everything at the bottom, not at the top. So that tells us that we need to flip direction. And that's a property of the clipping plane. So I can use that to flip direction. And usually they say about 4 feet from the floor is where we want to clip. So the clipping planes we can rename. We can call this one plan. We can name this one east. And we can name the other one north. Okay, just so we can select them by name. One of the things that just happened that we'll be able to use pretty effectively is that Rhino also created named views. So if you turn on named views, the little camera icon, we now have a named view for each of these clipping planes, and that will make the layout setup go very efficiently. So I'm going to make the detail layer current. It's under annotations. When I add a layout, it's going to create those details for us. So I'll go to layout and new. And here comes the new layout dialog. And page 1 is fine. I'll be creating 4 details. Printer, I want the Rhino PDF printer. D size 36 by 24 and landscape. So we'll pick apply. And now when we have our sheet, it already has these details cut on it. So you can double click, you can zoom around, you can set a display mode like render. Okay, so this is at the heart of a layout. You can also go to layers and turn the layer off in this detail. Now, layer off per detail is way over here. That's very inconvenient. Let's change that, and we can turn off some of these, maybe lock, maybe materials, probably good, maybe line type will turn off, and that way in print color and print width for now, because what I want to do here is grab this layout visibility. In this case, it's detail, since we're in the detail, and I want to move it up to the global layer. So I now have global and I have layout kind of right next to each other. I'm not sure when the labels will appear. I'm sure they'll appear here in a little bit. The one that we're interested in has the 4 corners. Okay, so I want to turn off the clipping planes in this detail. So let's sort again. Clipping plane, I want to turn them off in the detail, but not off in the model. So we'll go ahead and do that, layer visibility. If we turn them off globally, like the can lights or the ceiling, then it won't be visible here. And that's what we have going on, or anywhere actually. Okay, so what I like to do with the details, and hopefully our next version will have something to offer, you can scale these and come up with some padding in between them. Now with grid snap on, it's hard to just nudge that, but because you can select the edge of a viewport to do a lot of things, it's really inconvenient to have them overlapping, because you could end up picking on another detail and changing it. So I like those not to touch, and we will go ahead and double click on this viewport, and we need to set the scale. It can't be active to set the scale. You have to be on the layout, which is done with a double click or a double click. Pick on the edge of the detail, and we're going to set it to 1:16, which is also 3/4 of an inch equals a foot, a common way to say that. I want to line all of these detail views up, and there's a command called synchronize views, and synchronized views will align the other parallel views. Okay, and I can double click down here, and I'll be careful about maybe moving that one up, and then I can run synchronized views again, and you could see how that bottom one changed. So synchronized views. Now that I have the scale set, then I can lock them. But I'm going to set the views first before locking. So let's double click here because the views are actually going to mess this up. I'll go to set view and I want this one to be the north view. So let's go ahead and pick on it. You can see how it messes it up. So I'll come up here and we'll do a synchronized views again. And let's make this monochrome. There we go. So we have the section displaying in that view. Okay, this one will get messed up again. Let's pick east, and we have to run from one of the other views, the synchronized views. There we go. Double click and set view to monochrome. Great. This one we haven't done yet. It is the plan view. Okay. We'll also set that to monochrome, and we'll let this viewport do the synchronizing. Great. Okay, they're all ready to lock now. So I can pick these three and go over to properties and lock. And we can add a title block. We have a block in the file set that you downloaded. So this time when I insert the title block, actually I think I have a copy in the block in the file as well, just to make it easy. Title block, insert, we'll bring it in down at this corner. And we'll be a little careful over here with the right mouse button click, since at this point in time it's a little messed up. And now we have our title block. To make a layout, you can actually take this one and copy it, duplicate it, and when we duplicate it, it duplicates, and I've noticed that happened before, it duplicates everything but the perspective, which is just kind of funny to me. Something strange about that, or maybe I moved my mouse and interrupted, but these are almost identical. I could pick this and copy it with Command C and then go to this view and then Command V to bring it back. I really don't want it there. I'm going to leave it here, and we can delete these two, and we can stretch this out, and we can leave this one maybe here, but give it the rendered display mode. Okay, and if we go over here to perspective or even top view, if we take this construction plane and move it out here, let's take a look at our view on our layout. Yep, you could see how it updated. And the clipping planes, I don't want to, well, maybe I do. Let's turn them off globally, and then we can turn them back on again if we want them on, but by turning them off globally, they won't be visible. And we can also leave them on, but make them no print. So if we turned back on print width, in the clipping plane command, we could just set it to no print. Okay, and that way the clipping planes would be visible, but not print when we went to create the PDF. And we create the PDF with print, and we can print all the layouts. We only have two, but we can do that. They're going out to a D size PDF, and I want to open after sharing. I can very easily uncheck if I only wanted to do one of the layouts, or check again to bring back that first one, and we can do black and white. The one thing that I'm going to go ahead and pick close here, the one thing that I think would be really good before we say goodbye is to do a section style. And in order to do that, we need to turn on the ceiling. So let's go ahead and turn the ceiling back on. There's one interesting thing in this model. You'll find an extrusion on the floor that's on the ceiling layer. You can delete it. And I want to do 3 section styles through wall, through ceiling, and through the floor. So let's take a look at this extrusion here is on the subfloor layers. Let's do a little bit of hatching work, and that will make our PDF look a lot better. And then we'll print the PDF and we will be done. So let's go to floor and the subfloor. And on subfloor, there's a section style that says none. Pick on that and select hatch, and the color will be by object. You can make it magenta, rotation 45, scale 0.5, and pick apply. Great. So now you can zoom in and see that hatching through the floor. The border will be will follow the print width of the layer. Right now it's set to 3 pixels wider. Let's go to the ceiling, and it's set to none. Let's do this hatch here. Hatch dash, set the rotation to 135, set the scale to 0.5, and we'll set the color to blue. Pick apply, and there it is through the ceiling here. We're not cutting through the ceiling, so that's why it's not appearing there. And the last thing to do are the walls. Pick on none. And this one here we'll do solid, and we'll give it a color of cyan. And it doesn't have a scale or a rotation. Pick apply. Great. So all of that is looking good. We are ready to print both of these. We can get to print from here, and we have our images, and we may want to turn the ceiling off for this one. It Picky Sister stuff here. When I turn the ceiling on globally, it changed this viewport, and what I need to do is turn off the ceiling just in this viewport. Okay, and I moved it, so let's go ahead over here, turn the ceiling off in the detail, and we'll go ahead and print. That looks good. We can do display color, and we'll be printing both of the layouts. Print, and we'll give it a few moments here. We are opening it in our PDF reader. That's another really nice Rhino 8 feature. Okay, and there it is. Dimensions you can just add to your model or to your layout, and it will take on whatever the dimension style is. So if we go here, this will be our last goodbye. And you can see my clipping plane is cutting through think it's cutting through the door because you can see the doors look a little funny in this view. So let's bring it out a little bit beyond the door and see if it could be just the way the mesh is being clipped by the other plane. It's a little bit odd that it looks that way, I think. Okay, so to throw a dimension down, these should be locked. You can make the dimension layer current, and when you have the dimension layer current, you can go up to drafting and pick linear, and you can create a dimension here on the layout, or you can create the dimension. And I do have the ceiling there, which would be easier to see if we went to shaded. And that's okay. The monochrome is looking a little bit odd, like I said. Okay, so one dimension here. Sometimes selecting a vertex is helpful. I'll go ahead and pick on, when you have surfaces, I'll pick over here and we'll dimension the height of the door. Now this should be from what we call finished floor, so I'll go ahead and move that up. And that one, when I did that, it did break history. And I can create the dimensions on the layout or in the detail. So if I come over here and do dimension from here to here, and then from here to here, it's going to display identically to the way it did, there we go, in the detail. So there's 13'6", and then this is our 12 feet. Okay, so we have some dimensions print, and this time when we send them out, those dimensions will be included. Okay, let's go ahead and stop the recording